podcast amplifies the needs and experiences of Black women leaders in the workplace with a holistic focus on three core areas: leadership development, mental wellness, and relationship management. Our ultimate aim is to help Black women learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity.
Hey y'all, before we jump into this episode, I wanted to let you know that registration is now open for the January 2026 cohorts of both our early career and mid-career leadership development programs. No matter where you are on your career journey, our programs are designed to support your holistic development, wellness, and career growth. Our mid-career program is designed for mid and senior level leaders, and it focuses on developing a customized career strategy in this season of your career. Our early career program is a training program, and it's designed to strengthen the foundational leadership competencies really needed to grow into leadership roles. And of course, both programs will center your mental wellness and self-care and also provide a culturally relevant lens for you to do your personal and professional development work as a Black woman. Now, both programs include a ticket to our annual Black Woman Leading Live conference and retreat. It's taking place May 11th through the 14th, 2026 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Now, speaking of Black Woman Leading Live, it is the premier leadership development conference to help Black women professionals learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity. And honey, let me tell you, we have a time there. Activities include workshops, panels, wellness breaks, laser coaching, networking, action planning, and all of this in community with other brilliant Black women from across the country. Okay, in our 2026 event, we're going to be focusing on being future ready leaders. So if you want to explore registering for one of our programs, our cohort programs, or if you just want to register for the conference, either thing, you can see the links in the show notes or visit our website at www.blackwomanleading.com to get all the details.
Black woman lead. Keep on healing. Woman lead. Hey everybody, today we're talking about creating pathways through consulting with Kamilah Martin. Hey Kamilah, welcome to Black Woman Leading the podcast.
Hi, Laura. So good to be with you.
Yeah, good to have you. I'm excited to talk about this topic. And we're going to get into all of this and why I wanted to talk about this at this particular moment. But first, let me give you all the official about Kamilah. So Kamilah is the visionary founder and CEO of Katalyst, a consulting, coaching, and lifestyle company, reimagining what freedom, wellness, and leadership looks like for women of color in business. Through Katalyst, she leads a global ecosystem that includes an award-winning membership community, transformative retreats, and a consultant referral network that connects mission-driven organizations with experienced independent talent. With nearly 2 decades of leadership experience, Kamilah has built Katalyst into a home for women of color stepping out of traditional 9-to-5 roles into consulting and entrepreneurship, helping them thrive with clarity, confidence, and community. So you can see why we got Kamilah in the building for this topic. But let me tell y'all why I wanted to talk about this. At the time of this recording, and if you have been anywhere on LinkedIn or looking at news that connects with career development, you may have seen this. But the unemployment rate for Black women has jumped over the last couple of months to 6.7. Now, for everybody else, it's about 4.3, and it's been that way for like the last year percent. This translates to roughly about 320,000 Black women leaving the workforce in the last 4 months, if you will, from the time of this recording. Now, when you listen to the experts and you read the articles and all of that, there's multiple factors they're contributing to this. The top 3 being the anti-DEI movement, with a lot of Black women holding those roles and so losing those roles when organizations moved away from that. The massive federal government layoffs, of course, lots of Black women impacted by that. And then also small businesses cutting back due to the tariff policies. And so they can point to some economic indicators. However, where Black women are experiencing this at a rate that's much higher than everybody else, it is a major economic challenge indicator for everybody. When we're suffering, everybody is suffering. So with this backdrop, right, In addition to things like microaggressions, discrimination, toxic workplaces that Black women was already experiencing in significant numbers. And then we add an element of people just being tired and saying, you know what, I am going to lean into my own wellness. I am going to lean into my own joy for our season's theme, if you will. It is a perfect storm right now that many Black women are experiencing or considering entrepreneurship. Now, when we look at the numbers for the last couple of years, Black women have always had higher numbers of moving into entrepreneurship just because of our experiences. But this current landscape of these layoffs make it sometimes not even just an option for some people. And so I wanted to bring Kamilah on because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of business coaches, right? But I love the language that she uses around consulting as a pathway. And I wanted to focus on this because when I think of a lot of people in our Black woman leading community, they are experts in their own right who are doing this work inside of organizations. They are not new to this, they're true to this. You know, they're experts, they're doing this for their employers. And so many of them are transitioning in a service based capacity, right? Using those same skills they were using as an employee now as an entrepreneur, as a consultant. So I wanted to focus on this. And you see, Kamilah has the receipts already. She already doing this. So we're gonna get into this, and if this resonates with you as something you're considering, as something you've already jumped into, and you're like, "Whoa, I didn't know it was like this," you're in the right place. All right, so let's get into it. Before we start talking about the topic, I always, of course, have to just learn a little bit about the woman that we're talking to, the expert that we're talking to. So, Kamilah, I asked all of our guests, what does the phrase Black woman leading mean to you? And can you share a little bit about your journey as a Black woman leading and how you came to do your current work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for all of that background. It's something that's affecting all of us. I just want to, say that out the gate.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to diving into the whys and the hows and the what nows of all of that. Black women leading to me is something I actually had to grow into. I came from a family of, keep your head down, get a good government job, get your paycheck, get your pension, and call it a life, right?
Yes.
And in that upbringing meant sort of don't disrupt, don't step into who you fully are. Um, and a lot of times don't even know who you fully are on the outside to
Mm.
the public world. So it was a shift in me that I didn't even really accept until probably 40 years old. So that was about 5 years ago for me. And coincidentally, that's also when I started my company. So Black women leading to me means understanding who you are and stepping into your full true 100% power regardless of the eyeballs and the ways that you think you're supposed to show up, and having that confidence to know that no matter what, that background and that ancestral background is going to sort of carry you through, um, to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So that's what I've experienced,
Mm.
and that's what I'm seeing a lot of the women who enter our community begin to unravel and peel back the layers and find for themselves. So I started my career 25 years ago or so in the nonprofit sector. Actually, I started in corporate. So I started in
Okay.
business. My undergrad degree is in business. Found out very quickly that that was not the right path for me. And I transitioned kind of on a whim into the nonprofit space and sort of have just risen the ranks through there. Started out, entry level program assistant, and worked my way up to an executive level role with the International Humanitarian Organization. I ran the US operations of their youth program. And I'm a mom of two. I am divorcing, so all of this, makes up who I am in this moment in time in life and drives a lot of the decisions that I make. So, despite all of that, however, I still took the leap into entrepreneurship as the primary breadwinner of my family. My kid's dad at the time was a stay-at-home dad, and I just, for the reasons you mentioned in your intro, the microaggressions, the straight up racism, the lack of accountability within the organization and leadership that was running, particularly in 2020, which is when I decided to leave. Remember, George
Mm.
Floyd was happening. We
Yes.
were in the middle of COVID. So people were all in their, unregulated, dysregulated nervous system saying all kinds of nonsense and doing all kinds of things. And that's when I decided to leap into entrepreneurship. I would say I left to consulting and turned into an entrepreneur. And maybe we can get into that a little bit too, just
Yeah.
the distinction between those two things. Um, and that's me. That's my story. Now I'm supporting other women, primarily Black women. That's who we center in our community, who are itching to make that sort of change for themselves.
Yeah, I want to come back at that consulting versus entrepreneurship because I want to come back to that. But I want to get. We always talk about hard work and head work here, right? And so I want to get a little bit of the under the surface before we get into some of the tactical stuff. When we spoke a little earlier, you referenced consulting as like a gateway to liberation, and I thought that was such powerful language. Can you share a little bit more of your take on that?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the ways that we tend to think, just because of how we're reared and raised and educated, it's binary. It's either you're this or you're that. And what I've learned, sort of in this season of my life and my entrepreneurial journey, is it's a process, right? A lot of people think it's the end game, but what it ends up
Mhm.
being is a transition period, a bridge from the what you knew before to what you can possibly lean into exploring on your own. And the other interesting thing that I see is, while that's the gateway in the transition, in that journey of relearning yourself as an entrepreneur, a lot of women find that consulting is not the be all end all that they thought it was going to be, or even that they wanted it to be. They discover other things about themselves that they
Yeah.
begin to have the freedom and feel the permission to explore. And to give you an example, there was a one woman who we worked with who was a former attorney. So she was an environmental justice attorney, left, did consulting for a while, struggled in that. And she, in that process, emigrated to Mexico and is now coaching other women and families, not just women, but families who feel that they need to leave the United States. So she, again, discovered something about herself, about her true passions, about where her interests lied, about whatever was calling her, and she listened to that. And so
Yeah.
consulting was the pathway to get from the then to the whatever it is that she felt that she needed to become.
Yeah, and I love that. I used to say prior to running Nice Consulting, which is our current company, I used to be a small business owner for Black women who are launching their service-based businesses. And I used to say, like, if you want to test your confidence, your relationships, your self-esteem, your faith, try to start a business, right? Start a business.
Absolutely.
And so it's so much that you learn to this point. You learn about yourself, your interests, your weaknesses that were maybe underneath the surfaces, what kind of support you need, your boundaries, so many things you learn. So it is so resonant with me that people may start on this path, and because there is this exploration that gets to open up about who they are, that it helps them find really where they're going, or just the next step, right, of a long journey. I want to talk a little bit about this journey of entrepreneurship, but I want to go back to the comment that you made of consulting versus entrepreneurship, and that they are not necessarily the same. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, and even after I said, I was like, how am I going to actually explain this? So
We can work
this is
through it
what,
together, okay?
let's work through it together. So what I'll say is, people start into this world as a self-employed person, right? So they're not necessarily what I would consider, and this is, I got to this point, I did not believe this. I thought I was an entrepreneur out the gate. Entrepreneurship involves all the pieces: hiring, firing, projecting your numbers, looking at data to make decisions, building the right team around you, making quick pivots, quick decisions. And you can do that in consulting, but because a lot of us start out in sort of that B2B, like you're a business selling to a business, it's a
Yeah,
one-on-one. It feels like a one-on-one kind of situation relationship. So your only focus in the beginning time is, who do I get to hire me for my skills and my services? Who's going to pay me? And then how do I find that next person? So it's
yeah,
not quite thinking about the bigger picture and all the pieces that go into your existence, you're saving for retirement, you're making sure you're
yeah,
budgeting and pricing correctly. Like, entrepreneurship is a different kind of muscle that has to be worked out and flexed. And, I always say, and this, one of the things that I always say out the gate is, like, get a community, do it with others and learn from others' experiences. Consulting is more of a one-on-one kind of thing. You're a self-employed person, which is
yeah,
basically you're still trading time for money, right? Instead of thinking about how to scale and monetize, where you put a little bit, one point of effort in and get exponential returns on that effort. So
yeah.
that may be the distinction for me between consulting and entrepreneurship. I don't know. Do you have other other things to
Yeah,
add?
I think back to again when I was doing that work with women who were kind of launching their service-based businesses, most of them consultants and coaches and trainers and things of the sort. I think the big distinction is, in other language people may use is like freelancer, right? Or
Yeah.
contractor or things of the sort, right? But I think a big distinction is a lot of people, especially when they start at the low hanging fruit, which is the stuff they were doing professionally, maybe as an employee. And that's a great place to start if you're trying to make money for yourself, is that there is this confusion that skills alone make a business. So I would hear all the time that, I've been doing this for this employer. I've been launching these initiatives or managing change or whatever it is that you're doing for the employer. I can just do that for myself. And it's kind of like, yeah, the skill and the expertise is important as far as the offer or the actual core service that you're doing. But as you're saying, the sourcing the work, right? The business development, the marketing and the messaging language that draws more information to you or more clients to you. The sales conversation. So many people are scared to talk about the money, even though they have the skills, right? And so I would agree with you. I think when we start to think about entrepreneurship, it's more holistic. And what is the full life cycle that's going to help me to not only get money, but have money in the pipeline and move from only being able to monetize my time, right? Start to monetize my intellectual property and all of these other things. So I agree with you. And I think that is one of the biggest slaps in the face for people when they get started, when they're like, okay, I'm just going to go out here and market my skills and say, hey, I can do this, and not realizing it's a lot of other stuff, pricing,
Mhm.
strategy, and all of that kind of stuff. So when you think about the women in your community that you work with, that are in your membership that you're supporting, what would you say are some of those myths that you see or surprises that you see that people have to face when they want to transition into consulting and maybe entrepreneurship at some point?
Yeah, I would say three things come to mind. The first is that there are no rules in a lot of ways, and people have no idea what to do with that fact, right? I remember there are people in our community who would wake up, the day after they submit their resignation and just not know what to do with themselves
Yeah,
and feel completely lost because it's completely opposite of the way they've lived their life for 20, 30, 40 years,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's one thing that, there's a mindset shift that has to happen where people have been telling you what to do your whole life. And now you are responsible for yourself. You are responsible for your business. You are
yeah,
responsible for deciding what the next best step is for you. So there's again, self-reflection. There's, you got to go inside, to be able to sort of navigate that transition because it's very jarring for folks
yeah,
who aren't ready, and aligned with understanding what that is. I would say the other thing, kind of along the same lines of that, is the amount of unlearning that you have to do from the programming that you've been wired with. And I
yeah,
can't emphasize enough and I always say this to the women that I work with, whether it's one on one or in a group setting, you need to relearn who you are because you've been
wow,
living your life as someone else for a lot of or partially, right? You put on the mask and you go to work and you perform the thing and you come home, you take it off, and you're a different person for a lot of us. And there's a period that I encourage everyone to take, either right before they make that transition or take the time right after to sit with yourself, read some books, go away for a couple of nights if you can with no one else around, and just be with yourself and the thoughts that come to you. Journal, write those down, unlearn the things that you've been taught that are supposed to happen, because that trips you up. If I'm thinking I'm
mm,
supposed to have a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks and something, I don't have a client, then I'm spiraling because I'm not doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. And also, the
yeah,
other thing is there's a lot of stimuli that comes at us when you're on these social apps about, this is how to grow your business to 6 figures, this is what you need to do to use AI to do X, Y, and Z. And I think, again, part of that self-discovery is knowing how to filter out
yeah,
a lot of that noise, and really it all goes to centering and
yeah,
figuring out how to, despite everything that might be going around you, ground yourself to say, what is my path? what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And to know that, you have to know yourself. And then
Yeah.
how do I take the bits and pieces of what I'm getting fed and take what's going to be valuable and know how to have boundaries and sort of leave the rest and not make me feel like I'm not doing something right.
Yeah.
So, that's those are the things that I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that unlearning point you talked about, like the that I'm supposed to have a paycheck every 2 weeks. Are there other things or themes, the unlearning themes that have come up over the course of your work with women who are making this transition? Like, what are some of the other things that you find people have to unlearn?
I think a lot of people have to unlearn relationships
Mhm.
and the various relationships in their lives and what those relationships evolve into once you step into this new path for yourself.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people who will try and support you but may have some jealousy or may have some issues of their own that kind of comes through, and they might not say it but you'll feel it. They'll start to pull
yeah,
away. The relationships with perhaps your partner, if you're married or partnered,
yeah,
having very serious conversations about how you're changing, and what the expectations of the relationships are. Um, those are the two that I mean, that honestly, no one talks about that, but
significant.
I do
Yeah,
think, I think, I mean, personally, my relationships with some friends have shifted because I'm, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon sometimes going for a walk, and like, I'll text them and they don't understand and they get,
yeah,
it's just, you feel it. And I think, some of it is you recognizing that you are different.
yep,
There's no way around it. You are evolving into a different kind of spirit and human, kind of moving through the world. So your
yeah,
perspective is different. Your reactions are going to be different. Your view of failure, might be a little bit different. So other people have their own stuff that they're going to come to you with. And
yeah,
again, it goes back to knowing who you are and being able to ground yourself to really understand what's really happening. It's not necessarily that people don't want to support you, perhaps. It's just that they might not understand. They might be
yeah,
trying and you're asking the wrong questions and you're feeling some kind of way about it, but it's not
yeah.
about you. It's about the shift in that relationship and that entire ecosystem of everything that's around you.
Yeah, I think with the relationships thing is I think about unlearning too. I think boundaries is a big one for people too. Not just around your time, like you said, people wake up the next day and they don't, you got to create your schedule of what it's going to look like as a consultant, right? So not just your time, but even in the connection to relationships. I remember I've been an entrepreneur for many, many years now, but I remember earlier on, especially when I became a full-time entrepreneur, people calling me when I may be doing my business development work in the middle of the day, and they're just like, "Yeah, I think they're gonna be on the phone with me for 2 hours because you work for yourself, right? like, like you have no timetables. You can do whatever, whenever." And it's like, no, but I still get a job. It's my
Yeah,
job,
yeah,
right? But I still
yeah.
have boundaries around my time, or people expecting that it's things that you can do for them at certain times, and kind of making plans for your time because you're an entrepreneur, right? And you could do things anytime. So I think those boundaries really connect with the relationship piece that you're talking about too. And people have to renegotiate that, redefine it for themselves as well. Another thing that I think is a big thing for entrepreneurs, for consultants, even for employees, but we talked about it a little bit on our call before around the connection between like choosing to step into the consulting or the entrepreneur path and shifting our identity away from work. And how do we manage all of that as we begin to be able to say what we want more, create a vision, or have more time freedom, but our identity has been wrapped up in work? Do you have any thoughts about that based on your experience supporting women through this process?
Sure. And I'll speak first about my personal experience.
Yeah,
And I'm going to use my presence on LinkedIn as an example, where I was tied to my employer's identity on LinkedIn. So I was thinking, 10 times in my head before I actually posted something. How is this going to come off? How is this going to, is it
yeah,
showing professionalism and all that kind of thing? And it was very freeing for me once I detached from, however you want to put it. But once I detached from that identity of being this VP at this organization, that's when I was reborn and rebirthed. And I think it's just a lot of us, and especially with Black women, I'm going to generalize just from my lived experience and the experiences that I see from the other women that I support. um, again, we play this role and we are taught to play this role. We're taught that we have to work X times harder. We're taught that we need to show up, professional and because it represents us and our race and our family.
Hmm.
There's a lot of that baggage and pressure that we carry throughout our lives and throughout our days that I think others might not.
Yeah.
Others definitely as well. Like I think of a lot of my immigrant friends who, whose parents moved here from other countries. They have a lot of the same weight of how they show up. But I think a lot of the detaching is required. And if you don't do it, then you're still going to, again, be playing this role. And that's going to, in my opinion, hinder your growth because you're not operating from a space that's truly you. And what I
Yeah.
see, and I see both in our community, I see women who are still kind of afraid to kind of put their voice out there. And I don't think that necessarily has everything to do with their employer. I think a lot of it might be just sort of internal character traits,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
fine. But you have to understand sort of where your identity lies and find comfort in that space. So some people prefer to blog, some people prefer to be on social media and do videos. I hate videos. I prefer to write. So um, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but so much of it is giving yourself the space and time to sit with yourself and to feel all these feelings. This gave me an idea. I think I might come up with like a prompt, like a list of 5 questions just to sit with yourself and
Yes.
ask,
Yes.
before or when you're making that leap that really can help unlock um, some of the things that maybe were blocking us because of how we feel we need to perform in order to survive in this corporate, nonprofit, professional, adulting world.
Yeah.
Um, to just get you to a place of rawness and be like, okay, I'm rebuilding what real life and real existence looks like for myself, and
Yeah.
getting comfortable with what that is for you. And I think separating your identity from your achievements and your accomplishments and your addiction to certifications and all this kind of stuff,
Yes. Yes.
to prove to somebody things that you already know about yourself if you really listen to that internal wisdom, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of
I
where
think it
I just sit.
definitely. Yeah, it's layered, right? We did a podcast. I did a solo episode. Oh, it might have been like season 4 or something, some seasons back. I'll hyperlink it in the show notes. But it was on separating identity from achievement. And I was
Mm,
sharing some of my personal story and work I've had to do around that. But I think it is really powerful when people are at this pivot, when they are experiencing career related grief, right? We did a session, given all the layoffs, we're having people impacted within our Black woman leading community. We did a session the other day on kind of stress management while job seeking, right? Because there's
mm,
a lot of grief. If you think about all the degrees, we're often the most educated people, the degrees, the certifications. We spent all of this time building up this expertise, and then to feel just able to be
mm,
discarded in a way, right? It's a
mm.
considerable amount of grief that people feel when they need to make a pivot, even when there is some joy connected to that pivot, right? Some
Sure.
excitement connected to that pivot. And so being able to do that work, I think you coming up with those prompts and offering those to your community would really be a gift for people to reflect on those prompts. Now we've talked a lot about some of the hard work, the mindset, the identity work. Let's jump into some of the tactical work. So let's say somebody's listening, they are like, yes, I'm ready to start transitioning into consulting, or I got laid off and I see this as an option. What are some of those tactical kind of initial steps? Or if you could walk us through high level, what are some of the process points that people need to go through to be able to transition into consulting?
Sure. So this is one of my favorite questions to answer because it's very practical. The first thing I always recommend is know your numbers. Like figure out
Mhm.
what your budget is for you to exist in your life and stay alive every day for you and your family, right?
Yes.
And I say do two of those budgets. One budget is the absolute bare bones, like you're not contributing to retirement, you're not saving for vacation, but like again, what do you need to make it through the month, and that's the bare minimum budget. Then I say, okay, think a little bit more expansively. Like if you do want to be able to contribute to retirement, if you do want to be able to, take your kids on a vacation once a year or something like that, put your big budget. So you have the two to compare. And I think what that does for a lot of us is it
Yeah.
makes it feel more doable. Like when you look at what the actual monthly figure might need to be, and it helps you frame the kind of consulting work that you need to do. right?
Yeah.
If you need to make $30,000 a month to live your lifestyle that you're trying to live and to pay your bills and your debt and all that stuff, then you know you can't be out here taking these little one-off projects doing a
Exactly.
$30 an hour thing. So you have to
Yeah.
think bigger picture. Where do I need to place myself to be able to make this monthly money that I need to make? So you need to be thinking, I need to be working with boards, I need to be working with executive teams, I need to be thinking about retainer clients so that I have, steady cash flow coming in.
Yeah.
Perhaps you do a portfolio situation where you have one consulting client, but you're also doing some B2C work and you do individual or group coaching, like, so that it helps you,
Yeah.
it helps you paint a picture of what your next step needs to be. And the second thing I always recommend is make a list of 20 people, 10 to 20 people that you have worked with in the past. You can think way back in your career. It doesn't even have to be in the last, 2, 3 years. It can be your last two jobs, that you're still in touch with potentially, and have that list in front of you as people that you are going to reach out to once you make that decision that you're making that transition. It
Yeah.
does not happen where you just say, "Hey, I'm open to consulting," and the whole world kind of floods to you and say, "Absolutely, like we want to pay you $1 million." Your first clients are going to come from people you know who have worked with you, or other consultants who refer you to projects.
Yeah.
So that takes me to the third thing, practical step: get in a group or community or create your own. Get around people who have access and Rolodexes outside of you so that you can begin to build a referral ecosystem. And also
Yeah.
so that you cannot repeat mistakes that they may have made. And there are people who are willing, to share those sorts of things to help you, grow 10 times faster. So you're not sitting, spinning your wheels, sitting at your computer by yourself trying to figure it
Yeah.
out. So those are the first three tactical steps that I always tell people to make. And a few years ago, we put together like this quiz we have on our website, like about a third of the way down on the homepage, where it's like, I want to consult now, what? And it's asking you very specific questions for your particular situation, and it spits out results. Okay, if it goes deep. Like some people are like, oh, this hurt my feelings, because it's like asking, do you have a support system, right? Like, do you have people, are you married, are you partnered, or are you doing this on your own? All of
Yeah.
those things factor into how you frame yourself, how you set yourself up, how you communicate the work that you need to do.
Yeah.
And it helps you understand where you need to bolster, right, before you actually think about taking that step. Some people, they're ready to rock and roll, they get that score and it gives you a list of like your immediate next steps should be, this. And some
Yeah.
people still have some work to do before they actually get to that point where it might be the best decision for them. And again, if you're out here where this is like you have no other choice because you've got bills to pay and you need to start thinking creatively about ways to use your experience and your talents, it helps you again realize where you are in the reality of things and what you need to set yourself up with to be as
Yeah.
successful as you can when you launch your business.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the money first. You would think that is common sense, but it doesn't begin, of course, because if you're coming from being an employee and just used to that paycheck, thinking about the amount of money I need every month to be able to live the life I want, and then reverse engineering what type of services, consulting services do I need to be offering. You would be amazed the number of people when I was doing this, doing that work with founders. They have been like for a year floundering and trying to make money, and a year later they could not, from first glance, answer that question of how much money do you need to bring in a
Mhm.
month, right? They knew what their bills are, but they didn't know kind of what do I need to be able to live, right? To eat, to gas money, all these kind of things. And so I love that you say that first, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm a consultant." Well, what does that mean? What are you offering? What is the service that you're offering? And knowing that number, like you said, I would always have the running joke that if you need to make $20,000 a month, you need to be doing more than selling a $10 T-shirt, right? Unless you got a list of a million people to sell $10 T-shirts to, right?
Yeah.
You have to have something that's commiserate with the type of money that you need to be bringing in. So
It's the
it's,
data. It's the data.
yeah,
It's
it's
the
the
data that
data.
helps you make your informed decisions. And I'll say the other thing that having that money conversation with yourself does is it helps you know what kind of runway you have, right? So there
Yes.
are some people who fortunately might have gotten severance packages, when they left,
Yeah.
and have savings and have retirement. So their entree into consulting and entrepreneurship is going to feel a lot different than
Yeah.
someone who's living check to check and having kids to take care of and is a single parent, right?
Yeah.
So there's no judgment. I never have judgment attached to it because
Nope.
everybody's situation is different. But once you know what your situation is, that helps us craft what your next steps need to be. And to keep it real,
Yeah.
like, you may have to cut back on some stuff for a little bit if that's what your situation calls for.
Yeah.
Or, conversely, if we want to think about abundance mindset, you're going to have to think about maybe not what you need to cut back on, but how quickly can you grow the money that's coming in, and what do you have the creativity to kind of build and birth quickly so that
Yeah.
could be a reality. So I just like data to help us level set and say, okay, this is what we're starting with. So I always start with, who are you, what do you want, and what's your reality when I'm working
Yeah.
with folks, because there is, and I don't like these prescriptive, coaches that are out here to say, oh yes, do this and this will happen, because that is never the case. Like, we are all
Yeah.
different. So even if you are in a group coaching setting, you need to know what your place is in that larger sphere, because what's
Yeah.
what's being taught to you might not apply to your situation, or it'll you will have a different experience from someone else who might be in a different place. So you just have to be able to discern that, and having that initial data is, for me, very freeing and empowering, because it
Yeah.
helps me know what my next steps need to be, and it doesn't make me flounder and feel like I can't get there.
Yes, yes. And I love that you talked about like making that list of 20 people you know, because that's where you're gonna get your first money to sustain you. When I think
Mhm.
about prior to being a full-time entrepreneur, I was a senior leader at a university for 10 years. And transitioning for that, they wanted me to stay there, they wanted me to move up, but I saw that I had hit the ceiling for what I wanted to do with my life, right? But I told them about, you can keep me, you can keep my brain, but you have to hire my company is how we do that. And my very first client of my consulting company that I've now been running for 9 years, my very first client was my former employer, and they
Mhm.
stayed a client for 3 years. They stayed a client and really created the foundation that I could really build upon to have the type of money I needed to come in. That was from the connections that I had made while I was there. That was from people knowing my expertise and still wanting to have access to my brain. And so then I
Mhm.
was able to create opportunities for that. What I want to tell people is your first, at a minimum, $50,000 is going to be in your Rolodex, so to speak, from these
Absolutely.
relationships and things you have. I want to, I don't want to discourage you against it, but what I see a lot of people do, especially if there's going to be some element to your business that may have a B2C, I see people make the decision that they want to transition to this. And then they go and they have a fancy brand photo shoot, and then they go and they spend all this money on a website. And yes, you will need a website at some point just for the brand presence. You need to be able to say this is the where you can find out about my services. But I am telling you all, as somebody who has done this, coming out the door to make some money for yourself, you do not need to do all of that. And what I recommend is that you actually get a client or two first, because what I see is this with the website and the fancy brand stuff and all that kind of stuff. People spend this money, but they don't have their messaging or what their real strong offer. So you had somebody put this website together and it's a whole bunch of words that is like, what? What is it? What am I
Mhm.
paying for? But
Or
after
or
you
or Laura, there's like 10 services that you say you do, and people are like, I don't know what to do with this,
it's
right?
overwhelmed. It's information
Yeah.
overwhelmed, right? And wherever there's confusion, people won't buy. I'm gonna guarantee you that. And so once you get a contract under your belt, especially from your network, from people who know, like, and trust you already, and you're doing that thing, and you realize, oh, I like this. I could do more of this, or oh, this is the real contribution or the real transformation I was able to give this organization, this person. Then you got something to work with if you're going to spend your precious resources on having somebody do a fancy website for you. So I'm not saying you won't need a website. You will need a good headshot. You will need these things, but that's not the first thing you need to be able to make some money
Absolutely.
for yourself. Yeah, not the first
Absolutely.
thing you
That, I mean,
need.
if that could be point four of the three that we listed, I mean, absolutely. I'm going to go as hard as to say, don't do that. Like, do not build a
Yep,
website. Just blatantly make your priority is to make your money, because what it does is it builds your confidence,
yep,
and keeps you from spinning and feeling questioning yourself. And it makes you focus your energy and your time on the things that matter and that are going to help you
Yes.
be able to continue to do this work. And
Yeah.
also, what I see it, I mean, I'm going to get back to the kind of psychological mindset stuff about it, is a lot of people use that as a crutch. They
Yes.
feel that they're not ready to put themselves out there, so they spend all their time holed up in their bedroom, trying to do all this back end stuff that they think needs to happen
Yeah.
because they're scared to actually do the thing.
That's it.
So
That's
that's the
it.
other
Yeah.
thing that I experience, and I'm gonna call it out because it does is it feeds the insecurity, right? If you're months trying to put together should it be the or a on your website, in this paragraph, and you're not out there practicing your craft, practicing your pitch, talking to people, refining things, which is going to
Yes.
push you towards your goal quicker, then you know it's just not the best use of your time.
It's not the best use of your
So
time.
absolutely. I mean, I would say one thing I do recommend in terms of setting up like the infrastructure piece is to separate your bank accounts immediately.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
there are things we don't need to worry about. We don't need to worry about websites for the first, however, until you get your client that's going to come from, like you said, people or other communities. Um, and then separate your finances. So if you can open a business bank account, like you'll have to go
Yeah.
through the process for that, but make sure your money is separate.
Yeah.
It's going to make things easier if you do that right from the
Yeah.
jump.
Yep, that's going to be critical. And, with separating the business account, that you might have to start you a business entity and all of these kind of things, right? But even if you're going to freelance, and I recommend people, even if you're going to freelance just as you, the individual, and you're not going to start a business, a lot of people don't know that you can get an EIN number for yourself so that you're not having to put your social security number everywhere and all this to get paid. I think the bottom line here, you all, as you listen to this last few minutes, is that in the beginning, your number one priority is revenue generation. And if you look at your time, if you look back over the week, let's say somebody's listening, they're already in the consultant lane, they've already made it over, and they're trying to figure out how to make this thing work. If you look back over your time and your time on the week, more of it, I would say more than 25 to 30%, 25% of it. More of that was in wrestling with which word is going to go on the website, or finding your makeup artist for your brand photo shoot, or signing up for yet another certification or class or something because you feel like you need one more credential to be able to get the client. Then you need to do a check yourself moment. You need to be focused on talking to people, like Kamilah said, talking to people, having conversations that will lead to some potential cash for you. Because you got to validate if you can really do this thing, and you validate it with the money at the end of the day. Okay, this is so good. I could talk about this all day, but I do want to ask you a couple of our season theme questions, Kamilah. Do you have any final notes just on this topic of creating pathways through consulting before we transition to those questions?
I think the last thing that I always like to share is people get overwhelmed with the thought that this kind of has to be the be all end all for their whole life. And I
Yeah,
just like to say, if this is something that people feel compelled to do, like if there is a pulling in you that this is something you need to try, you can say, I'm going to try it for a year. I'm going to give it my all for a year. Right. And then move on to something else if it doesn't work, but at least you tried it. So I would just say, just make sure you set the reality of what this is. This is not the rest of your life situation. This is a for now for this season, right?
yeah,
And once you, I think, can put it in perspective, that a lot of times takes the pressure off. You can always go back to keep looking for a job, but again, if this is something you feel compelled and called to do, to know that there are people who have done it. There are groups that you can join. There are books you can read. There are resources out there to
yeah,
help you feel like you've given it your all, and to say, at least
yeah,
I tried that, right? So that's the last thing
yeah.
I would say.
I love it. You can always change your mind. Yes, you can. I
Mhm.
love it. So, okay, we're going to transition a little bit. Our season 8 theme is leaning into joy. And I think this connects to that as we talked about alignment and freedom and all the stuff that people are often seeking when they step into a consulting or entrepreneurial path. But I want to talk a little bit about you, Kamilah, because we look at all of our guests as role models for these things that we're talking about. And as you think about your own moments of leaning into joy as a real life Black woman leading, when you think of a moment where you truly felt joy, what comes to mind for you?
Joy to me is spontaneity and coming across people living their joy, honestly. So, anytime I can find myself in environments where there's creativity, there's creative energy, there's not worrying about what's happening in the world, new conversations, new ways to kind of discover ways to live. A lot of times that happens when I'm traveling because there's something about
Yes,
being outside
yes,
of your actual environment. Those are the things that bring me joy. I love seeing people happy. I love seeing people being their true selves. And I try my absolute best to say yes to every invitation that's going to allow me to experience that. I think as a woman of a certain age, hormonally, and as someone with young kids, like it's more of an effort for me than it used to be to
yeah,
see joy in everyday things. I think I'm a pretty joyous person in general, but it's I have to try more, and
yeah,
a lot of that goes back to gratitude as well. So when there are times where I'm not necessarily feeling that natural joy, trying to retrain my brain to just think about what I'm grateful for. The
yeah,
small things, like I have, well, not this is I have a roof over my head that right now I don't have to worry about, and
yeah,
like I'm going to get pick up my kids, we're going to get boba later. So things like just the things that you can be grateful for. I was able to take a walk this morning at 10 a.m. without anybody asking or telling anybody where I was. So it's
yeah.
that's just cultivating those moments where I feel most free is what's going to bring me joy.
I love that. Now, you mentioned being a woman of a certain age and being a mom. Has your definition of joy shifted over time?
It certainly has. It certainly
Yeah.
has. And I'm even trying to define what it was. It's hard for me to put my finger on it. Uh, but I do think that the root of it all, like if I really do reflect on it, is really freedom. And I
Hmm.
think and liberation. And I think that's why I kind of fell into this line of work. That's why it's such a right fit for me at this stage of my life.
Yeah.
Anytime that I think I've experienced joy, it's because there's something about it that makes me feel free.
I love it. Ooh, I just got a little chill when you said that. The joy and the equal line over the freedom. That is good. That's good. What about this? Have you ever, because somebody might be listening now and they might be in a low moment. This is maybe not a joyful season in their life. It's not a season that has felt like freedom. Have you ever had to relearn joy after a difficult season? And what did that process look like for you?
Girl, last week. It's like, oh, it's like that's the entrepreneurship journey, like up and down. And I mentioned before that I'm going through a divorce right now, which has turned my entire existence kind of on its head, and
Yeah.
what kind of is stable and secure. So yes, absolutely. I've had to change my definition of joy, knowing that it might not be the big vacation, but it might be the time I just take my picnic chair out and sit under a tree and look at the water and think
Yeah.
about, is that helping me live this prosperous life, and how am I defining joy and prosperity? It's not going to be the big flashy things like they might have been when I was, 20, 26 years old traveling the world. It
Yeah.
could be those minute small moments. And I would say even in those hard times, it's hard to even see that as a moment of
Yeah.
joy. So it's a constant training of your brain to kind of pause and stop kind of what you think is happening right now, to force yourself almost to say, I'm going to force myself to find a moment of joy. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can just be, again, I'm going to sit on my back, whatever,
Yeah.
and taking a deep breath and take a deep breath out, know that I have fresh air, go maybe take a 20-minute nap
Yeah.
because I can, and those appreciating what those moments are for you,
Yeah.
um, instead of focusing on the things that aren't right. And I try my hardest to tell myself that this is just for now, and this is the season for now, and there's another day coming. And the
Yeah.
next day is going to be just slightly better than this day. And the day after that may just be slightly better than the day before. And that's the way I start to slowly climb myself kind of out of those moments and be able to focus on the tiny, tiny things that I can be grateful for that bring me joy.
I love that. Like making it a mission to find it, right? In these little moments. The other day, I was having a particularly stressful day. Just nothing really bad was happening, just too much jam packed in one day, right? More just a
Mhm.
physically mentally stressful day. And I went out to check the mailbox because I was looking for a check that was supposed to be coming in here. And I went out to check the mailbox, and the sun on my face, it just stopped me dead in my tracks. And just literally, my neighbors were probably like, all of my neighbors are retired. So they were probably like, what is this chick doing? I was standing out there like this, just like, because it felt so good in the moment just to feel that on my skin. So, want to encourage you, if you're in a moment where it's a tough season, make it your job to see if you can find a tiny moment in your day of joy. So, thank you so much for sharing that, Camila. This has been wonderful talking to you. I love that you are doing this work and you're supporting women to make these transitions in their life. Where can people connect with you, or anything special you have going on that people should know about?
So LinkedIn is where I'm most active and the best place to stay abreast of what's happening. All my links are there. You can join our newsletter. It's a very active and robust space where I have these kinds of conversations as if I'm talking with you one on one, and I encourage, responses. I respond to every email that I get. The other cool thing that we just launched is a money and mindset book club. I like to pilot things. So this was a pilot that we started in September where we're doing this, not just the practical, tactical money things, but also the woo woo stuff
Yeah,
of money is
yeah,
energy, and sort of again unlearning all of these patterns that we have about our relationship and attachment to money and currency and the flow of things. So that's been
yeah.
really, really fun. And it's not just for people in our community, it's anybody can join this book club. Everyone loved it, wants to do it again. We think we'll probably launch in November, to because we want to have a buffer month to kind of implement some of the stuff we've been learning and be with each other in community there. So that's the other thing I would say check out. So if you go to our
Yeah,
newsletter, you can just check that that's what you're interested in, and you'll get updated on there. So those are the best places to connect with us. So we always got something going on. We just came back from Puerto Rico retreat. So there's ways that I'm just trying to
I
bring us
love
all
it.
together to elevate and evolve in community with people who are ready to have this kind of, bigger thinking.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We will put all Camila's links in the show notes so you all can connect with her, get involved with her community, follow her on socials. So hope you enjoyed this, first of all. Hope you got something out of this. I particularly enjoyed it, but it's not about me, it's about you. Hope you got something out of this. We are available on all major podcast platforms. So share this with a friend. If you know someone needs to hear this conversation, share it with them. You can follow, subscribe, rate, like, all the things to help us continue to amplify this work that we're doing. We are also on YouTube. So subscribe to our YouTube channel at Black Woman Leading, and all of our handles, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, is also at Black Woman Leading, so we can connect on socials. If you want to connect with me personally, I am at Laura E. Knights on Instagram and LinkedIn. And of course, if you want to learn about our corporate consulting work, where we do work with leaders and with teams, you can check out our corporate site at knightsconsultinggroup.com. We would love to connect with you in any of these ways. And until next time, be well.